I'm joined by Mathew Lee, the UN Bureau Chief of the Inner City Press in New York. Mr. Lee, welcome to the program. The stated mission of the 2001 invasion of Afghanistan by the international coalition was to uproot the Taliban and eliminate terrorist safe havens. Yet it seems that the coalition is anywhere but close to realizing their objectives. Bin Laden still on the loose, and the Taliban seem to be thriving and getting more and more sophisticated. Do you see any sign of progress there?
No, I'll have to tell you, it seems like whatever progress was being made, if it was being made, has been turned back. The events this week almost couldn't be worse for the coalition. Hundreds of Taliban prisoners from Kandahar jail. There's an increased tension between Afghanistan and Pakistan about these same issues, and now there's a widely publicized grouping of Taliban just outside Kandahar. So things are not looking good, and I think in part it's because in the years since the Taliban was overthrown, there hasn't been much development, and so it's pretty easy for them to recruit people.
Recently, we heard the Afghan president himself the target of a number of assassination attempts by the Taliban, threatening to chase the Taliban into their alleged bases across the border in Pakistan, and of course the row that followed. How serious is the threat of Pakistan-based Taliban?
Well, I mean, many of the border is pretty porous, and it seemed, by all accounts, one of the Taliban's one of their strengths is to be able to go back and forth over the border. So I don't think Hamid Karzai is making it up that people go back and forth, but I think it seems that he's fairly unrealistic in thinking that they're going to swoop into Pakistan or have success. Even the U.S. is actually, it's interesting, the U.S. has urged Afghanistan now not to cross the border because Pakistan is a sovereign country and it makes them extremely angry. Meanwhile, the U.S. itself has been doing airstrikes in the border regions of Pakistan, also seeking the same ones that you met, Mullah Omar and others. So I think most people see it as somehow Karzai trying to raise his leverage in the talks. I don't know how realistic it is that he would send the Afghan army over the border.
And how do you characterize the Taliban? Are they just are they an organized group of militants, or are they just disgruntled people turning into militia themselves?
Well, I mean, there's many ways to characterize them. They seem rooted in the Pashtun ethnic group, and they obviously have a it's based on or espouses religious principles. When they sort of took over or came to power in Afghanistan in the 90s, they were viewed as sort of religious students, extremely fervent and good with automatic weapons. Now I would say it's something that the reason also it's not that the Pashtun or the Taliban are only in Afghanistan and then go to hide in Pakistan. The Pashtun ethnic group obviously goes, the border between Pakistan and Afghanistan is sort of artificial and was set down by the UK. So that's actually one of the problems. The group from which the Taliban draws its strength is on both sides of the border, and there are many religious schools on the Pakistan side where people are some people in the U.S. would say people are being indoctrinated. Others would say they're being trained. In any event, it seems like it's a movement that's not without its supporters among the Pashtun ethnic group, which is a major group in Afghanistan. And it's also the group that Karzai comes from, interestingly enough.
And what do you make of this emerging trend of chasing the militants or the insurgents into another country across the borders? First, we had Turkey, and now Afghan threatening to follow the Taliban into Pakistan. Isn't that threatening the stability in the region, following the insurgents into another country?
No, I think that's an interesting analogy. You're right. I think one could say that both of the northern part of Iraq and this Afghan-Pakistan border, things are kind of spiraling out of control. I mean, there have always been issues. Until we reach the point now where Karzai has said he's going to go in and root them out. He was constantly asking then President Musharraf to be more serious and crack down on them. So this is I think this has been several years in the offing, unlike the more recent thing in Turkey. But it's clearly like, I mean, at the Security Council, for example, it comes up but only obliquely. People view this as being something where it's between the two countries and the U.S. It's a threat to international peace and security, right? You have neighboring countries threatening to go across each other's borders. So it's almost amazing with the amount of money that also the U.S. in a sense gave Pakistan to sort of fight terrorism along the border, and that not only Osama bin Laden, but Mullah Omar and Masood and these various other ones have not have not been captured. It's a tough terrain, so they have terrain on their side, but they're obviously they have some skills as well.
And finally, Mr. Lee, it seems that people are bearing the brunt of the attacks, both by the Taliban and terror groups alike, and the coalition forces as they hunt down the Taliban. The recent UNHCR report certainly painted a grim picture of people's suffering in Afghanistan. Wouldn't you agree?
Oh, definitely. In fact, UNHCR has said that the number of both refugees and internally displaced people worldwide has gone up. But the country with the most that have produced the most refugees is in fact Afghanistan, with fully 3.1 million refugees who have fled violence. Mostly they're in Pakistan, some are in Iran. So that really speaks badly to. One would have thought, and the problem with Afghanistan, it's sad what's happened to the country, because this goes back obviously to the Soviet occupation, and then the chaos that followed. There have been Afghan refugees in Pakistan for well over a decade now, and so one would have thought after since the quote toppling of the Taliban in 2001 that this would have been turned around and people would be returning. But if anything, now more people are leaving their homes outside Kandahar. They've been told to leave villages that NATO will attack, and the Taliban as well will take over an area and tell civilians to leave, to not get caught in the crossfire, or just to give them more room to move. So it's the numbers are only going up, and we can only hope that things will get better.
Mathew Lee, UN Bureau Chief of the Inner City Press in New York, thank you for appearing on the show.